In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
I'm your host, Lori Spencer. This is episode 6 of Strange Bedfellows. And man, I've got an amazing show on tap for you guys tonight. Some of you may already know our guest if you keep up with the news of the war in Ukraine with Russia. This man has been well known to people who follow that situation for many years, including myself. His name is Russell Texas Bentley. And he's a Renaissance man. He's a jack of all trades. How would I describe Russell Texas Bentley? Well, first of all, I would describe him as a Texan. First and foremost, he's a Texan. He's a musician. He's a soldier. He's a cannabis advocate, an activist, philosopher, and a communist. Which is why I think he's going to make a perfect guest on Strange Bedfellows. As you guys know, the concept of this show and what we do here is we bring together people that are political opposites, people who might otherwise be fighting with one another. And actually, we find out that when we sit down and talk to each other, that we have a lot in common and we get along beautifully. And Russell is one of those people that I share a lot in common with. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him if you've never heard about Russell. He was born in Texas in 1960, served in the US Army in the 1980s. And, you know, he just always had an interest in politics and history. And after the Maidan coup in Kiev in 2014, and then the subsequent war that erupted, particularly I think it was the Odessa massacre that motivated Russell to do something. Even though he was an American, he was sitting over here in the United States watching all this unfold on television and said, these people are Nazis. They're butchering these innocent Russian people. I have to do something. And so he traveled there and he signed up to join the fight on the side of the Russian separatists. So it's a really fascinating story. He has been living in Donetsk, I believe, since 2014, and he fought in the defense forces of the Donetsk People's Republic, the DPR. After serving a year in the Vostok Battalion and the Spetsnaz Battalion, he made the transition to war correspondent and human aid volunteer, which is what he does now. I believe he is now retired from the battlefield. But he's here with us tonight on Strange Bedfellows, and I am pleased to welcome our friend Russell Texas Bentley. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
It's great to have you.
Glad
What
to be
time
here.
is it over there in Donetsk?
Well, it just turned about 3 o'clock in the morning here, Saturday night. So
the witching hour.
Well, no, B.B. King wrote a song about 3 o'clock in the morning.
He did.
It's a good one too. So I think I'll be able to stay up for the next couple hours to talk to you.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And the way we usually start out the show on Strange Bedfellows, because it's a show about political opposites who agree more than they disagree. I'm a libertarian, longtime libertarian. I guess these days you'd call me a Kennedy libertarian because I'm working on the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., trying to get him elected president. And of course, you're a communist. And I have many friends who are communists, and we frequently have them here on the program. So I like to start out just by learning a little bit about you and your journey politically. You know, when you were growing up, I guess you were born in Texas. Were you born in Austin or Brownsville?
That's right. I was born in Austin, Texas on 38th Street at the, whatever, I can't even remember the name of the hospital, but right there on 38th and I-35.
Oh, Brackenridge Hospital.
Brackenridge, that's right.
Yep, Austin was my hometown for 25 years, a big chunk of my life. So we have that in common. And I think we have a lot of friends in common down there in Austin. So, there was always a community there that I recall when I was in Austin of communists. People think of Texas as this conservative red state, but there was always, particularly in Austin, we call it a blue city in a red state. It's always been very liberal, but there was a strong community of socialists and communists there.
That's right. Politically aware people. I'm very, very proud to be from Austin, Texas. I can tell you that when I came here in December of 2014, I met a guy here the day after I got here who had been born in Moscow. It was a Russian family. His family moved to the United States in about the year 2000, something like that, late 90s maybe. And they moved to Austin, Texas. And so there's two guys that grew up in the United States that have fought on the good guys' side in this war. And they were both spent time from Austin, Texas.
How strange is that? Isn't it great when a Texan meets another Texan? I know when I travel, anywhere I go, somehow we find each other. It's like a magnetic
it was really amazing
pull.
because I was in the Sparta Battalion recruitment office, and I didn't hardly speak any Russian at all. I was there by myself. I'm there with like maybe 25, 30 other dudes. The sergeant comes in. He speaks for like 15 minutes in Russian. I don't understand a word of it. And then from the back of the room, I hear this guy say in English, "Javier, I'll tell you what he just said here in a minute. I'll translate for you." And I went over and I said, "Hey, can you translate for me too?" And I had like some old work clothes on, from, some old Carhartts, maybe little holes in them, kind of worn out, stuff like that, work clothes. And this guy asked me, he says, you're not Russian? And I'm like, no. And he's like, where are you from? I'm like, from the States. He's like, what state? And I'm like, I'm from Texas. He's like, me too. And then comes, what town? Austin. Oh, I'm from Austin too.
Get out of here. No way.
And so, we gave a big hug and like all the guys are clapping. It was,
wow.
It was straight out of a movie or something. It was quite an amazing
crazy
situation.
I was telling you a little bit before the show, and I want to recap that story here for our viewers. When I first heard of you was around 2015 on Vice News. I just happened to be watching Vice News for some reason one night, and I thought I knew what was going on in Ukraine, but I was getting only one side of the story. I was getting the propaganda from the mainstream media, and Vice News, of course, does some pretty biased reporting. But I'm glad I found that. And I'm going to play a little bit of the segment that they did about you as a profile of you, as the story of an American who decided to go fight for Russia. And, they tried to make you look like you were crazy, like you were nuts. And the more I listened to you, I thought, I like this guy. I really liked everything that you said. And you kind of red pilled me. That was my red pill moment when I started to question what we were doing over there in Ukraine and what the situation with Russia was really all about. And that's when I started to dig and learn the truth. I didn't know about the Nazi problem in Ukraine because my media wasn't telling me. And the first time I ever heard about it was from you on Vice News. So I just want to roll a little bit of this and show folks, this is from 2015. So this is a few years back when you were still active in the fighting forces there. But I think this is a great way for our viewers to get to know you, why you're there, why you went there, and why you stay there today.
We're out near the airport in Donetsk, and we're about to meet a volunteer fighter from the Vostok Battalion, which is on the separatist pro-Russia side. He's going to tell us how we ended up fighting alongside the men here. So Texas, we're in the Donbass, in Ukraine. How did you get here?
I've always been interested in politics. Started reading Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh when I was about 12 years old. Really, communism seems like a just way, a good way. So, I mean, and I know from history that it takes communism to defeat fascism. So I'm a communist. I'm here to fight fascists.
Did you think you'd ever end up serving in somebody else's military? When you open the American passport, it says you can lose your citizenship for fighting for another country's army. It says right there on the second page.
Yeah, I'm not fighting for another country's army. I'm fighting for freedom and justice. I'm fighting against fascism. And the United States government is a fascist government these days. It is. It truly is. And so I fight fascism. And if the United States is fascism, then I fight the United States government.
Tell me about how you got involved fighting for the separatists, because most people in the West actually support Ukraine, and they see this as a Russian invasion of Ukraine's sovereign territory.
But it's not a Russian invasion at all. It's the people of Donbass saying, no, we're not going to have Nazis come here and tell us how to live. I'm fighting against fascism. I'm fighting against the genuine Nazis in Kiev, the Nazis that say Heil Hitler, that love Bandera, who is a terrible war criminal. Those are the guys in the Ukrainian government right now. And the United States government put them in power, and they're criminals. They're psychopaths.
I mean, I was in Kiev just last week, and you don't see parades of people marching down the street with swastikas.
Not every day, but they do.
I mean,
they do.
I've been to a military parade as well in Kiev, and I didn't see any Nazi paraphernalia at all.
Well, that's because the US PR company that Poroshenko has hired has told me, hey, keep the swastikas out. It looks bad on American TV. But they're there, man, and you know that they're there.
Well, I've seen a couple of individual soldiers from the volunteer battalions sporting actual, Nazi sort of symbols. I've seen one guy wearing a swastika. I've seen one guy with a sort of SS on his hat. But what I haven't seen is fascist or Nazi ideology as part of the official ideology of the country or the army as a whole. I think that's exaggerated. There are individual skinheads, but this uprising in the East, it's primarily a Russian nationalist uprising. So it would seem the opposite of communist ideology. The declared goals aren't leftist, they're not communist. If anything, they're more right-wing. So how does that sit with your ideology?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of right-wing ideology with the guys that I've been working with. Sud Bremeni is a communist organization, and I am in the Sud Bremeni military unit here. I don't think it's so much right-wing, it's more just self-defense. This is their land, their homes, their families. Nazis from the other part of Kiev are coming here. I mean, when the fucking Nazis first came here and the people stood in front of the BMPs and tried to stop them with their hands, and the guys would shoot them or run over them.
I was there.
Yeah.
They weren't Nazis. The guys who came with the BMPs were just regular Ukrainian military conscripts.
Well, I've got a message for those Ukrainian military conscripts, and it's this. We're fighting brothers against brothers here. The Ukrainian military conscripts work for Peter Poroshenko. Poroshenko works for Obama. Obama works for oligarchs, American oligarchs. So you're fighting for American oligarchs. What we need to do is Ukrainian army, join Donbass army, go to Kiev, clean out the Nazis.
А с чем боретесь здесь, конкретно в Донбассе?
С укропами.
Со всеми украинцами или какими-то конкретными?
Тут нет времени разглядывать, какой он там хороший, плохой. Они в меня стреляют, я в них. Все просто. Мы с Техасом РПГ, первый, второй номер. Так что пока мы здесь на передовой, ни один танк не проскочит.
А как служится с американцем?
Это очень, как сказать, если со стороны войны сказать, то это очень человек отважный. Так. Я учусь у него там ставить мины, там растяжки, он мне всему учит.
Откуда вы знаете, что он не американский шпион?
Да по нему видно.
Sud Bremeni na vajna, Sud Bremeni na vajna, Sud Fremeni ne Papiera, Idina Hue Obama, Private sector at the pederasta, private sector at the pederasta, private sector at the pederast, also sort many automat.
К нам чаще всего приходят, у нас есть испанцы, есть итальянцы, вот Техас американец, да. А те, которые ощущают высочайший уровень неблагополучия в собственной стране. Они там себя чувствуют некомфортно, когда они видят то, что происходит, когда они видят, как там опускаются люди. Они понимают, но не всегда они это могут объяснить, что эта война, она идет и в их стране тоже. Мы считаем, что то, что сейчас происходит, это фактически идет какая-то перекройка мирового порядка. То есть мы считаем, что идет столкновение двух проектов. Первый проект, тот, которому мы противостоим, мы называем его черным проектом. В основе этого проекта лежат фашистские представления. Ну, известно, что в Соединенных Штатах Америки, во Франции, в Германии существует образование, доступное как бы для всех, уровень которого опускается. Это превращает их в ту самую слизь, превращает их в людей, которые не в состоянии даже осознать свое положение, вот, и не в состоянии оказать какое-то сопротивление тому, что с ней будут делать. Ну и есть целый ряд людей, которые не хотят превращаться в эту слизь. Есть страна. Эта страна называется Россия. Вот Россия сейчас этому сопротивление оказывает. А наша конечная цель – воссоздать Советский Союз в исправленном, в исправленном и улучшенном варианте. Мы называем это СССР 2.0.
What can you tell me about your views of America? What kind of a country is America?
It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love it very much. It has a fascist government right now. I was born in 1960. Things were nice back then, but since maybe 1980, it's been downhill. You know, the government in the United States is a criminal government. It doesn't represent the people of the United States. It represents the oligarchs and the corporations.
So why not fight Nazis there instead of coming here to fight other people's Nazis?
Well, Nazis are Nazis wherever they are, and if I fought them in the United States, I probably would have been fighting by myself. You know, they would have said, "Oh, some crazy guy." You know.
No, Russia's a country that's not without its problems either. I mean,
I know that.
Many people would say that it's an authoritarian dictatorship as well. And the movement here supports Russia and is supported by Vladimir Putin. So where do you stand on supporting a cause that could bring the kind of authoritarian system in Russia to eastern Ukraine?
I don't really see Russian as being that authoritarian. As for Vladimir Putin supporting Novorussia, to the extent that he does, I thank him seriously. If we want to talk about authoritarian dictatorships, I think there's a much more authoritarian police state in the United States than what I saw in Russia.
Let's talk.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go back to Texas since that's where our hearts are. I'm sure even now you probably miss Texas, but
I miss Mexican food. I miss Barton Springs. My heart's in Donetsk. That's where I live now. That's my home. I'm a Russian citizen. I'm a citizen of the Donetsk People's Republic. And, and I love Donetsk. That's my home.
I love that. I was just curious about when you were coming up in Texas and how you discovered communism and how long you've been a communist and what was it that brought you into that?
Well, I was born in 1960 in Austin. I grew up in Highland Park in Dallas. I come from a pretty wealthy family. And those were the days of the Vietnam War, of the civil rights movement, of the beginning of the actual real environmental movement, And I always loved to read. I was like a voracious reader. I used to, read a book a day, basically. And when I was like 12 years old, it was still the Vietnam War, junior high school. I used to go to the public library. That was my favorite thing to do, instead of play football or whatever, I love to read. And so I went to the local public library, and, the Vietnam War was a big thing. So I'm like, well, let me read about the Vietnam War. And I came across books by Ho Chi Minh. I came across books by Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and I came to understand that the war in Vietnam was like an invasion by the United States, and it was not at all some kind of liberation or, we had no business being there, and as I understood it from the Vietnamese, just like in Texas, if people came, if the Mexican army came to attack the Alamo, we would fight back, and so I understood that. And so I had like a different view of things from most of the people around me. And it just went from there, I joined the Army when I was 20 years old, the U.S. Army, served a couple of years over in Germany, and on the front lines. That was actually 1981 and 82. It was still the Cold War. Our job, I was a combat engineer, and our job was to guard the border along the West German border with Czechoslovakia and East Germany, the Fulda Gap, Hof Corridor. And it was it was real frontline stuff. We had bullets in our guns. We had real explosives in our trucks to blow bridges and roads if there was all of a sudden a big invasion. We were looking at East German soldiers through binoculars that were looking back at us through binoculars, a couple of 100 meters across the border there. And so I learned about like a different perspective living a couple of years in Germany. I traveled around Europe every chance I got when I was free. And just from there, I got a different perspective than a lot of people, that might, go to high school and go to college and then, get a job at an insurance company or something.
No, I can't picture you behind a desk.
It's not really my style.
No, I can't imagine that. Well, I wanted to shift gears and talk about the here and the now, or recent events that have occurred with the Wagner Group revolt, and your thoughts on that, because you had a really interesting take on Wagner. I know you've interacted with those guys somewhat. And what are your thoughts on what Prigozhin did? What was he thinking?
Well, first of all, yes, I do have several friends that are in Wagner. And by several, I mean more than I can count on one hand. A couple of them are officers. They're guys that I fought with back in 2014 and 15. One of the things that makes Wagner such an excellent military unit is that they have a lot of veterans from the Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic, that have been, that have 8 years of experience in combat, and the people that can be in a war for 8 years and still be alive, you can pretty much take for advantage that they know what they're doing. And so I have multiple friends in Wagner right now. It's funny that, people, they say, oh, Prigozhin and Wagner and, oh, the mutiny, the revolt and la, la, la. But, Prigozhin and well, first of all, I'll say this, Prigozhin didn't make the call to go to Rostov. He said it was a council of commanders. He asked, because he's a very courageous dude. He spent a lot of time on the very front in Bakhmut with his men, but he's not really a combat commander. He's more like, the economic and political leader of Wagner, the ideological leader,
Mm-hmm.
And so his combat commanders, he asked them, what to do when Shoigu gave the ultimatum about everybody had to sign a contract with the MOD by the end of June.
Right.
And as he said, and I believe, his commanders are the ones who said, we're not going to stand for this. We're not signing it. And we're not, just going to disband and let dissolve all the work that we've done over all these years. And so, so that's the first point. It wasn't Prigozhin that made that decision. It was the combat commanders, pretty much who all of them, are heroes of Russia. They have the gold star, they're, the best military commanders in the whole Russian military without question, proven by their accomplishments. And then what they did, the FSB, which is like the Russian FBI, they investigated Wagner. They investigated Prigozhin personally. And they said we've opened a specific case on the charge of treason. And the next day, like the 26th of June, they said, no, we closed the case. There's no evidence of treason. That's against Prigozhin and Wagner. You think Alexander Lukashenko, one of the certainly smartest and adept at self-preservation head of state in the world today. He invites, Prigozhin and Wagner into Belarus. And Lukashenko has had several attempts at color revolutions against him in Belarus already. And they were pretty serious, pretty dangerous attacks, which he overcame. But if there was any question about the loyalty of Prigozhin and the soldiers of Wagner, Lukashenko, that's the last thing he would need would be for, some questionable military unit to come in. And so
Right.
by Lukashenko inviting them into Belarus, that shows that he is literally trusting Wagner and Prigozhin with his life. And it don't get, it's like mountain climbing and who's going to hold the rope while you're, over the 500-foot cliff. You're trusting somebody with your life. That's as real as trust can get. On the other hand, Vladimir Putin has said that, betrayal is the worst crime of all. And I agree with that. But if Putin thought that Prigozhin had betrayed him, had tried to attack him as the president of Russia or overthrow the Russian government or the Russian constitution, Putin would never have let Prigozhin get away. He would have said, no, I don't care if you go to Belarus. I don't care if you go to the United States. We're going to get you. We're going to get you.
Right. Yeah, that's the question I have now is that we find out from Lukashenko this week that actually Prigozhin is not in Belarus. He's apparently in St. Petersburg, Russia. So
that's where he's from.
Yeah,
he's taking care of his business. He is not. He's got. The FSB searched his house. They took some guns from his house. They took about $250 million worth of rubles.
and I saw some fat stacks of cash in United States dollars too.
That's right. That was a big chunk of money, but
it was interesting.
He's got a lot of work to do. Money's a tool, and so he had a lot of that tool, but he's got it all back. He got it all back. He got all the guns back. He got all the money back. So there's no charges against him or Wagner. And he's basically free to do whatever he wants. He's walking around St. Petersburg. He's walking around Rostov. He's walking wherever he needs to go, and nobody's messing with him because it would be stupid. It would be inexcusably idiotic for Russia to disband, the most effective military unit, in the 21st century. So they have a powerful thing there. Lukashenko is going to take care of it, I believe. And who knows, really, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen, but I believe that Wagner will make the transition to Belarus. They will become trainers. They will also remain a cohesive military unit, and they will, and they will be 100 kilometers from Kiev instead of 300 kilometers now. And if they're needed to go in, well, when they're needed to go in, they go in. That's what they do. I mean, what they did in Bakhmut or Artemyevsk, it was a legendary military victory for the ages. I mean, there's basic, there's a, how do you say it? There's a course of study called military science. And there are laws in military science, just like there are laws in physics, just like the law of gravity, just like the sun comes up in the morning. And, one of those laws of military science is that when you are assaulting an entrenched defensive force, particularly in a built-up urban area like Bakhmut, that you need 3 times as many attackers as there are defenders in order to have some, reasonable expectation of success. And the less it is than 3 times as many, scientifically, the less you can expect to have success for the assault. Wagner went into Bakhmut not with 3 times as many, not with twice as many, not even 1-to-1. Wagner went into Bakhmut with less than 1-to-1 parity with the Ukrainian Nazis that were dug in there, and they beat them. Prigozhin says it was 20,000 men that he lost. It would have been less, supposedly, if he'd had the ammo and the equipment that he needed that he didn't get. But to take a city like Bakhmut with less than 1-to-1, that's literally, the Alamo or Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans, except they won. It's like the Alamo fighting against 3,000 Mexican soldiers and winning.
Right.
So, it's a miracle of courage, dedication, determination, and they did it. There's no finer fighting for it. And the most important thing, and it doesn't matter, if you have, a Stinger missile or if you have a knife, the guy that's the most determined, the guy that's not going to ever, that's going to fight down till, scratching with fingernails. Those are the guys that are going to win. Morale, esprit de corps, that's the most important consideration in any battle. And that's how Wagner won in Bakhmut. They had courage, they had determination, they had the willingness to give their lives to win. And they did win. And they got stabbed in the back for doing it, there's a lot of questions about what's happened with Wagner, between Wagner and Prigozhin and Shoigu, since back in the days of Syria, the original fight there, Deir ez-Zor, 2018. Prigozhin told about, he came out publicly at the beginning of June with the story about Deir ez-Zor, where 200 Wagner soldiers were ambushed by American air power and massacred, basically. One of my friends was there. He was one of the very, very few people that survived that attack. He was there as a soldier in Wagner in Syria and Deir ez-Zor. And, Prigozhin said that before they went on this mission to the Conoco refinery outside of Deir ez-Zor, Syria, that they were ordered to take by the Ministry of Defense, the Russian Ministry of Defense. And the Ministry of Defense told them that, yes, we're going to give you air cover. We're going to, turn on the air defense artillery, the S-300s or S-200s, whatever they had there. And, and we're going to put helicopters and fighters in the air. And if any kind of aircraft come to attack you, we're going to protect you. And then as soon as these guys, it was, like a long, 10-kilometer, 20-kilometer march or something. They left in the evening, 6 p.m., something like that. They didn't arrive to their target until midnight, something like that. And as soon as they left, the Ministry of Defense called back and they said, don't put the aircraft in the air. Don't turn on the air defense. And don't tell Wagner that we didn't do it. And I don't know if this is true or not. I know it's true that Prigozhin reported on this in early June. But I also know it's true that in Russia, there's a law against discrediting the Russian military by making false statements that make the Russian military look bad. So,
Exactly.
I mean, there's people in jail in Russia
Mhm.
who said something like, say, the Russian army killed all those civilians in Bucha, which is a complete lie. And they wrote it, they publicized it, and they got put in jail for it, as they should, because it's a lie, a provable false lie. So Prigozhin says this about Shoigu, and he went on to say that like a couple of months later, he met Shoigu at some big fancy function in Moscow, and he tried to ask him about it, and Shoigu basically told him, tough darts, little ranger. And so if Prigozhin said it, which he did, then it's either true or it's either a lie. And if it's a lie, then he should be, and no one will argue, he should be arrested for that, for telling a lie, that Shoigu betrayed and stabbed in the back his men, did something that led to the death of scores, if not hundreds, of Russian volunteers. And so if he said it and it was not true, he should have been arrested for it the next day. And he wasn't.
Right. It's all very confusing to us in the West. And I do want to point out that I just became aware as our stream was going along. I noticed that our viewers really dropped off. And I'm told that YouTube cut our feed for some undisclosed policy violation, as censorship platforms like YouTube love to do. So I just wanted to let people know, if you want to watch the show, we are on Rumble. You can catch it on my channel. Also, our second Maverick News channel is live on Rumble right now. We are also live on Twitter and Twitch. But apparently YouTube did not like the show tonight, so they cut
YouTube
our
is not
feed.
a big fan of me. I had an account on YouTube for 12 years. I made a video on like the second day of the special military operation.
Ah, yes. And they
It
banned
was like
you.
a 40-second video. I was standing with Alexander Sladkov on the front with a column of Russian armor that was moving into Ukraine. And I just basically said, these guys are here. There's a lot of them. It was like the second day of the special military operation. I said, we're coming in. The good guys, we're going to help and we're going to liberate. The bad guys, we're going to kick their ass. And I mean, there was nothing really all that remarkable about the video, but it got tens of thousands of views, hundreds actually of thousands of views.
I remember.
And then the next day, it was in the millions. And I mean, it went viral. And I mean, Jimmy Kimmel ran it the next day, saying, "Oh, look at this, this spunky little piglet here. He's in the Russian army, And I mean, so tens of millions of people saw that video. And then the next day, my YouTube channel is deleted. YouTube is owned by Google.
Yep.
Google is evil personified. What do you expect?
Well, they've banned me too. I'm a graduate of the YouTube school of being banned and censored. And it's all because every time I bring up the subject of RFK Jr., and I guess I can say his name now since we're not on YouTube, but it seems like if I even mention his name, I get banned. They call it medical misinformation.
It goes to show that, the media today, it ain't even media. It's a
joke,
a tool of control,
Right.
I mean, censorship, it's ridiculous, man. I mean, okay, so
it's out of control, Russell, here in the States.
2015, I got deleted from Twitter. 2017 from PayPal. 2018 from Live Leak, which was kind of a British version of YouTube.
WikiLeaks. Yeah.
2019 deleted from Facebook.
Me too. Because of the war, because of my war coverage. That's why I was banned from Facebook.
Well, really, I mean, and the thing is, people these days and of course, I was on Facebook until they kicked me off. But I have to say that, I would be embarrassed to say that I was on Facebook today.
Yeah, I don't want to go back.
On. It's like people have to, the truth is out there. People have to look for it. It's not like the truth is going to actually just come. It's not going to come to you on the front page of the newspaper that lands on your front door every morning,
That's
most mass media today is absolute propaganda. It's gaslighting, disinformation. It's the opposite of the truth. And so people have to look for it. I mean, I'm still on Telegram, which is kind of like the Russian version of Twitter. And I'm on VK, which is like the Russian version of Facebook.
Yeah. So there, take that, Mark Zuckerberg.
I've had 3 web pages. All of them got hacked.
Wow.
So
I believe it. I do.
People have to look for the truth, but it's out there. But, you're not going to find it on Facebook or on NPR or
YouTube, apparently.
Hey, that dude, Simon Ostrovsky, that used to work for Vice, that did that.
Yeah.
He works for PBS now.
Of course he does. Perfect place for him to land.
And,
So speaking of fake news, the other big fake news story that we're being pummeled with this past week is the situation at the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Boy, that's a mouthful. I hope I pronounced that right. Did I pronounce that right?
Zaporozhye, yeah. It's
Zaporozhye. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like Frank Zaporozhye.
Frank Zaporozhye. Good one. So, we're hearing and have been told all week that Russia's going to blow up their own nuclear power plant, stage a false flag, blah, 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 blah. I believe that the plug was pulled on that, most likely by the Western backers, because the PSYOP was exposed. The good news is we can use the free media. And I've been screaming about it for a week, and a lot of other journalists, independent journalists, have been screaming that this is bullshit. This is a false flag. Russia is not going to blow up their own nuclear power plant and cause a nuclear incident. They're not that crazy, folks. And I think that people in the West are starting to figure it out. And my personal belief is that operation was called off. literally aborted at the last minute. What do you think?
I think that there's a real possibility of that, and thank God if that's the fact. I mean,
Right.
they can still do it tonight or tomorrow. I mean, it remains a target. They've been shelling it for most of the last year since Russia took it over. This dude Rossi from the IAEA has been there himself several times. He's got guys there on a continuing basis. Another like ridiculous, contemptible lie from this dude Rossi. He's been there. He's like, yes, the nuclear power plant is being shelled, but we don't know who's shelling it. And that's a lie that, and it's like he tells this lie and he knows that we know he's lying. And yet he still tells it, and it's like,
it's getting paid to.
I've been in Donetsk for almost 10 years now. I have quite a lot of experience at looking at the craters made by incoming artillery rounds. And I can tell you that, just like, an Indian tracker looking at a footprint, it's not a question. I mean, you can say, okay, look, this is the footprint of a guy that's walking with bare feet. This is the hoof print of a horse. This is the paw print of a dog. And you can't say, oh, I can't tell if it's a horse or a dog or a person, And when you look at the crater of an artillery shell, you can tell. And it's a simple science, man. I mean, it's like without question. You can look at it. You can look at the size of it, and you can tell what the caliber was. And by the caliber, the maximum range that it can be fired from. And by the shape of the crater, you can tell where it came from within 15 or 20 degrees. Because artillery shells very rarely come straight down. They usually come at an angle. And from that angle, from when they hit, you can look at the hole. You can look at the way that the shrapnel spreads out. And so you can tell how far away it was and what direction it comes from. So to say that we can't tell who's shooting at the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, it's like saying, I can't tell which is the front end of the car or the back end of the car. Right. I mean, it's ridiculously stupid. And of course, a lot of people don't have experience looking at artillery holes out in front of their houses like the people of Donetsk do. And so it's understandable that they could be misled or confused. But those of us who do have experience, who know that anyone with any sense, and a day or two even on the front line looking at the results of artillery attacks, I mean, it's without question, and so, the United Nations it's a compromised organization. The IAEA, the ICC, the OPCW, these are all simulacra, they're fake pretend versions of what they're supposed to be doing. And they don't do at all what they're supposed to be doing. They do the opposite of what they're saying that they're supposed to be doing.
That's right. And I saw a report on RT a few days ago. It was on July 5th. And their top story was, the imminent attack on that nuclear power plant. RT was reporting to their people that, this is going to happen today. And then it didn't. And I know that you have some questions yourself about RT and some of the Russian media about its trustworthiness as well. We know the Western press can't be trusted, but what are your feelings on the Russian media, and how accurate do you think their reporting is on the war?
Well, I have several friends that work for RT,
Me too.
and
everybody misses the story sometimes, but
yeah, of course. But generally the bigger things are more, politically, socially, like informationally, economically, the more like pro-Western they are. I mean, there's, really, there's two different parts of Russia. There's St. Pete and Moscow, and then everything else, I mean, and, I've been to Moscow a lot of times. I've been to St. Pete. I've been to Grozny. I've been around Russia a pretty fair amount. And it's a whole different world in Donetsk than it is, in Moscow,
definitely.
or St. Pete, or, even Rostov. And Rostov's a pretty cool town too. I've been there a lot of times. I like it. It's a tough town. It's like the Russian version of Houston.
Interesting. I understand it's basically just one big military base, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it's it's a major city, well over 1 million people in just the city, and then they're like the metroplex around it. It's I mean, it's a historic city. I mean, it's well, it's older than the United States. It's been around for a long time. It's a tough city. I mean, as far as like gangster cities, they say that Odessa mama, Rostov papa. And Odessa has also been known for centuries as like, kind of like, Marseille in France. It's like the, or Rotterdam. I mean, it's one of those port cities where a lot of shady stuff goes on. Shanghai would be another example. And so Rostov's a tough city, but I like it very much. But when it comes to Moscow or St. Pete, you see too many dudes driving around in $500,000 Mercedes. You see their girlfriends driving around the traditional car for the mistress of a Russian oligarch is a Bentley. So, you see these chicks driving around, not just driving around, they like to park, like right in one of the lanes of the street. They just park in a lane and make a traffic jam for, a couple hours while they go in and get some, Botox for their lips or something. And they drive Bentleys, I mean, so,
yeah,
it seems to me that the real war that's going on, I mean, beyond anything about, Nazis and like that, which is real also. I mean, there's real Nazis here, real Heil Hitler Nazis, torturing, murdering.
And they've been there for
Bastards
100 years, long before anybody ever heard of Adolf Hitler or the Nazi Party. The Ukrainian nationalists, as I often say, were the OG Nazis, the original gangsters.
That's a fact. I mean, where I am right now in Donetsk, this is Donbass. This is the area, the Ukrainian, southern Russian area, the Donbass, the Don River Basin. This is the area where a lot of the original Russian Revolution was fought. This is the area where the Russian Civil War was fought.
Very historic ground.
Had, was horrific atrocities and stuff. The white Russians against the red Bolsheviks, which, a lot of people have no clue that, you ask somebody, well, did the United States ever invade Russia?
Yes,
Yeah, they did.
we
They
certainly
did. The
did.
United States, France, Japan, England sent 50,000 troops
The
during the Russian
Expeditionary
Civil War
Force, right?
100 years ago, like
That's right.
1921.
Hmm.
And 50,000 troops on the side of the whites. They did a lot of atrocities. They did a lot of fighting here. And so, this land
Even then,
also
we were trying to affect regime change, basically. We were
exactly,
trying to,
even back
get
then,
rid of the
100 years ago.
Bolshevik government.
And when the German Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, they occupied the city. It was Donetsk was then called Stalino,
Hmm.
and the German Nazis occupied it for 700 days. That's less than 2 years, and in less than 2 years, they murdered over 100,000 citizens of this city in less than 2 years. There's a place about 1 kilometer from where I'm sitting right now. It's called the 4-4 Mine. It was a coal mine shaft. It was 5 by 3 meters across, and it was 365 meters deep, which is more than 1,000 feet deep. And that was the disposal place for the German Nazis for their victims in the city of Donetsk when they occupied it. More than 75,000 people were thrown down this hole. It was 365 meters deep when the Germans came, and when they left, it was 65 meters deep. And the other 300 meters, which is 1,000 feet, was filled up by human bodies. They threw, whole families at a time down this hole. And so these are the people, and the people that we're fighting today, defending ourselves against today, are the people that say Heil Hitler and Slava Bandera and think that that was cool and want to do that again.
And they want to do it again. They're very clear about that. And, I do want to dig into the history of all this a bit more, because a lot of people in the West don't understand geographically and ideologically how divided Ukraine has been for more than a century now. That, Western Ukraine has always been that hotbed of Ukrainian nationalism, Nazism, because of their history with Poland and Germany during the First World War, in the interwar years, the 20s, the 30s, and then, of course, when they came together in World War II. After World War II, of course, we know that the Banderites, the OUN, the UPA, got in bed with the CIA and MI6, and they were used essentially to wage guerrilla warfare against the Soviet Union. So in many ways, that Western regime change objective has not changed in 100 years. We had a couple of brief respites where we were more friendly with the Soviets. Certainly we were allies for a brief time during World War II. But as soon as that war was over, Winston Churchill just couldn't wait to invade Russia. He had that crazy plan called Operation Unthinkable. I don't know if you're aware of that.
George Patton, too, was a big fan of the idea of fighting. My grandfather was in Patton's Third Army. He was a tank commander. He was one of the first Americans into Germany from the western side. And he hated Patton, by the way. But
I think most of his own men hated Patton.
You have a very good understanding of the history of Ukraine, and the Donbass, that most Americans would have no clue about, but that is a fact that the OUN, that from before, they were waiting for the German Nazis to come in. These are the ones, and there's photos of it, the girls giving flowers to the German Nazis, offering the bread and salt, on the towel. And, and the worst war criminals. It's funny, the German term Schweinhund, which means pig dog. The Germans made that up about the Ukrainians because they have these hats with these weird little triangular things on the brim.
Yeah, I've seen those. Uh-huh.
And they called them pig dogs. They said it was like pig ears or something. Even the SS thought these dudes were too much.
That's true. That is very, very true. And Hitler was using them. There was never any promise made of Ukrainian independence, but that's the reason that the Banderites and the Ukrainian nationalists were supposedly allied with Hitler. They believed that once the war was won, and the Nazis did kind of dangle that carrot in front
but
of
only
them.
an idiot trusts.
But why would you believe Hitler? Exactly.
Yeah.
The man who never kept a promise.
Again, in that same statement, it applies to, the Russian foreign ministry these days. Why did they believe when NATO said, "Oh, we're not going to expand 1 inch eastward"? Why did they believe when, the Minsk I agreement, the Minsk II agreement? Why did they, a couple of weeks ago when the African presidents came to visit Moscow, and Putin showed the treaty, that supposedly was signed back in March of 2022, where, the security agreements were made. The Ukrainians signed it. The Russians signed it. The Russians moved back from near Kiev, from Bucha, and it's based on this agreement. And as soon as they did, Boris Johnson came and said, "No, we're not agreeing to that," and they threw it right out the window. How many? It's like the old Charlie Brown, where he goes to kick the football and Lucy's holding the football. And every time he comes to kick it, she moves it and he lands on his back. How many times?
Many times.
And, and it's like so many things, at some point, you can't really say, "Oh, they're so stupid." You can't say they're stupid anymore, because when they do the same thing and get the same result every time, it's not that they're stupid, it's that they're doing it on purpose.
Well, that's very interesting, Russell, because I've long had a question about this, and I've posed this same question to a lot of different guests on the show, including the Russian ambassador to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky. I've asked Scott Ritter about it. I've asked Kevin Michelizzi about it, asked John Mark Dugan about it, and I want to ask you too. It seems to me, and especially I want to ask you because you really know your Soviet history. And during the Soviet Union years, post-World War II, during the Cold War, the Khrushchev years, and I guess, later you could maybe lay some blame on Brezhnev for not dealing with this Ukrainian Nazi problem. I mean, they got Bandera, KGB assassinated him in Munich in 1959.
In Munich, yes.
And yes, they were able to capture and imprison many of them, but still, Khrushchev gave Crimea back, or gave Crimea to Ukraine. Khrushchev himself was Ukrainian.
He lived here. He lived in Donetsk. He lived in Petrovsky district. In our house, and near where our house is.
No kidding. Wow.
He was a coal miner.
Yeah.
In Donetsk.
That's right. So I was curious to get your thoughts on that. It's where and how and why the Soviet Union and then later the Russian Federation failed time and time again to deal with this problem on their doorstep for 60 years.
They
and
worked very hard to deal with it. First of all, I mean, in the 10 years after, the end of the Second World War, when the OUN and OPA were still active in the woods around, like that. I mean, I think they killed like 100,000
got a lot of them.
Nazi rebels, I mean, and these guys, they really were the worst. I mean, besides maybe some of the Japanese, but, the Ukrainian auxiliary units were among the very, very worst of the war criminals of the whole Second World War. I mean, the things they did, normal people can't even imagine, you know, and don't want to hear about, you know. And I mean, and it's beyond question. I mean, there's photographs, there's historical documents beyond any question about what they did. And so, I mean, and that's the thing, you know, I mean, like talking about like recent news, just the most horrific and tragic thing. You know, today I just saw that Erdogan in Turkey has released all those Azov bastards that were supposed to be held in Turkey till the end of the hostilities.
Supposed to be. And, so what happened there?
Well, I can tell you what happened is the Russian diplomats got ass rammed, you know, right there in public, you know. And I got to say that, you know, as bad as, I mean, we're not, let me put it like this, as incompetent as the military situation has been dealt with by the Russian Federation, Ministry of Defense, over the course of the special military operation, and before that too. I mean, okay, so as incompetent as that has been done, as many egregious mistakes have been made, as many opportunities have been lost, as many chances, you know, as many failures to do what needed to be done have happened. And the same thing you can say with the economic war, which economic war, military war, it's the two sides of the same coin. You can tell exactly how the Donbass war is going by looking at the exchange rate between the Russian ruble and the US dollar.
Good point.
And the more rubles it takes to buy the US dollar, you know, the less Russia is winning. And at the same time, I mean, as bad, I mean, you know, the Russians left 300 billion US dollars in foreign exchange and gold reserves in other countries that has now been frozen by those enemy countries.
Right. And
the Russian central bank, instead of saying, you know, if they owe Canada $50 million for, I don't know, whatever, instead of saying, okay, we'll go ahead and take it out of that 300 billion that's frozen there in Canada, they go ahead and pay it, you know what I mean? And so the economic war and the military war have both had terrible shortcomings, mistakes, and failures, you know. I mean, and again, to the point where you have to ask, is it possible for anyone to be this stupid, or are they doing it on purpose? But in the diplomatic front, you know, the treaties that Russia has signed, you know, particularly, you know, over the last 20 years, you can't name one where they didn't get just completely screwed to the floor, you know. And so now there's talk, oh, you know, in the fall, we're going to have peace negotiations, and we'll just take Zaporozhye and Lugansk and Donetsk and Kherson oblasts, and then we'll make the peace. And that's not the peace. That's the humiliating defeat. And
and it still doesn't solve the problem. Russell, this is the argument that I keep making, and I would think you're going to agree, is that the problem has always been the Nazis, the Ukrainian nationalists, and they're not going to give up.
You know what? I don't agree. It's not the Ukrainian Nazis. It's the American and European Nazis.
Yes, you know, and we're backing the Ukrainian ones.
Here it is right here.
Yes.
This whole war, it's not, Ukraine against Russia. It's, it's not even NATO against Russia. This war is the war of the parasite class, the global parasite class against humanity. That's exactly what it is. I mean, and, Donbass and Syria, those are the spear point, Yemen. I mean, there's a few other places, Yemen being one of them, Palestine as always, but it's the parasite class. Anyone at this point that doesn't understand that there's a real depopulation project in effect right now, by this time, if they don't understand that, then they're not really educated enough to have an opinion or be qualified to have an opinion, because it's so obvious, the whole thing, the destruction of the food sources, the whole thing with the the shot, which I guess we can say since we're not on YouTube anymore.
Yep,
but
you can talk about it now. We're off YouTube.
That's the thing. Anyone that doesn't understand at this point that the vaccine was an intentional poisoning of this generation and future generations, it's like, how can you kid yourself? The dude, like last week, he was 30 years old, big bodybuilder, some dude. He took 4 shots and he kicked over. He died from a heart attack at 30 years old. Mr. Health Nut. How many soccer players and elite athletes just kicked over because of that? And so obviously that's a deal. The war here, the war of attrition.
Oh my God, it's depopulating Ukraine, and a whole generation of Ukrainians are dying.
It's the generation and all future generations.
Right.
And it's so at this point it becomes clear, and the billionaires in Russia are as much the enemies of humanity as the billionaires in America, in London, in China, in South Africa, anywhere. I'm a Russian Orthodox Christian and a communist too, but I'll tell you that the love of money is the root of all evil. It's funny the way that it's actually a verse from the Bible, the words of Jesus Christ, and it gets shortened and changed around a lot in English, and you hear it all the time. Oh, money is the root of all evil. And that's not what he said. He said the love of money is the root of all evil. And indeed it is. And the people today in Russia that are making money off of this war, they're the biggest enemy of the Russian people is the oligarchs and parasites in Moscow today. And I mean that. And they're the enemies of the future of humanity. And it's not necessarily very safe for me to say that, but
yeah, I was going to say, be careful, because I know there are laws in Russia.
It is the truth. And I've said since
what you're saying is true. And also I wanted to ask you as a communist, because I know that the communist movement, there is great division among communists, particularly in Europe, that, for example, in Russia, the Communist Party is the second biggest party in Russia and generally supports Putin, generally is not opposing him anyway. But there are communist parties in other parts of the world who do not support Russia in this conflict because they view this as an imperialist war between two imperialist powers, imperialist Russia versus imperialist NATO countries. And so I wanted to ask your thoughts on that, Russell.
Okay, well, of course, we can answer that very quickly and easily. And if Russia is an imperialist power, name all the countries that Russia has invaded
there you go.
in the 21st century or in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And yet, as you say, there is certainly a oligarch class that is in charge in Russia. certainly a capitalist class.
Very much so, you know, and I mean,
there are war profiteers there too, just like there are
very,
here.
very much so. And
that's just real talk. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are fanboys for Russia.
Exactly.
And I know
it's
you're
the
not.
elephant in the room.
Right. And I know you have to be careful what you say, and I don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, I mean,
I'm
not the kind of guy that's careful about what I say. I say what I think.
That's why
I
we
don't care
love
who
you.
likes it or not. But I'll tell you this: this is something that's well worth understanding. First of all, in this war, it is the war between the oligarch, parasite, billionaire class and humanity. They are right now, all the billionaires on earth, they have their own deal going, and they're working to get rid of about 90% of us, make the rest into sex slaves, to organ donors, you know, to, whatever, for dinner, you know. And so every billionaire on this planet is a thief. No one can work hard enough to actually earn $1 billion, which is $1,000 million. No one, I mean, I used to be a tree trimmer, you know, and I made $50,000 a year. I made $1,000 every Friday afternoon. And to do that work, I had to risk my life. It is the most dangerous job in the United States, by the way, if you care to look that up. It is the most dangerous job. It takes courage. You know, actually, human beings are born with two instinctive fears, one of which is the fear of falling. So to be able to overcome the fear of falling, you're able to overcome any other fear, because all other fears besides the fear of falling and the fear of sudden loud noises is the other instinctive fear. So it takes courage. It takes physical strength, tremendous physical strength. You know, back in, 20 years ago, I was like Tarzan, man. I was like Johnny Weissmuller. I was swinging through trees with a chainsaw, you know, and also it takes real skill. It takes the ability to think in 3 dimensions. You know, we weren't like just cutting down forests. We were cutting down big trees in between houses, you know, where I had to put each little piece, you know, in between a couple of meters. And I made $50,000 a year doing that. So what billionaire, who Bill Gates or Elon Musk or anybody else, you know, how smart do they have to be? How tough do they have to be? How hard do they have to work to make, 200,000 times more than I did doing that kind of work? So, every billionaire is a thief. You can make $1 billion by stealing it or by scamming it somehow, but you can't make it by working, by earning it. And so, and so here's the thing. It's very interesting. From the beginning of 2022, the beginning of the special military operation, to the beginning of 2023, according to Forbes magazine, Russia had 22 new billionaires in 1 year. They went from 188 billionaires to 210. In the time of war, in the time of, when people are, grannies are sewing socks for the soldiers at the front, guys are taking, collections to make, to buy some gloves or flashlights or a drone or whatever, for the soldiers on the front. 22 new billionaires. So of the 210 billionaires in Russia, their collective wealth increased by 150 billion in just that 1 year from 22 to 23.
And then there are the lower
150
level
billion.
grifters too, not just the big
Listen,
oligarchs.
that's not their total collective wealth. That's how much it increased in 1 year.
Jeez.
And that's $150 billion. And understand that the entire military budget for the Russian Federation, do you know what it is annually?
No idea.
75 billion. So these billionaire parasites increased their wealth by the amount that was 2 years of the whole military budget of the Russian Federation, $75 billion. Do you know how much the U.S. military budget is?
I've lost track, hon. A long time ago.
It's around 800 billion.
About 800 billion.
More than 10 times as big as the Russian military budget.
Yeah.
And that's just the U.S., not NATO, just the U.S. So, I mean, you see there when these kind of parasites, you know, they make money on war, and so they want the war to continue. I mean, there's a reason that, you know, the railroad bridges across the Dnieper River have not been blown up. And that's the main way of transporting soldiers, ammo, equipment, everything.
That question has crossed my mind too, Russell.
Well, it's crossed a lot of people's mind here. And those bridges are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they're still there is because $700 million a month worth of Russian products go west across those bridges to Europe. And so, again, the parasite class that's making the money, you know, they're the ones that are saying, no, we can't blow these bridges. We'll send in another battalion of guys to defend the front. But just because those trains that go west with our, whatever, our samovars or whatever it is the Russians are selling. I mean, and this $700 million a month does not include in any way the gas or oil. I'm not talking about petroleum. I'm talking about just like regular products, like, shirts or matches or whatever that are made here that are sold there, Yeah. And so the biggest danger to the Russian hope for victory in this war against 21st century fascism is the parasites and collaborators in Moscow. And I'm not saying that Vladimir Putin is one of them.
Right, but you're saying he needs to clean his own house. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not saying that he is one of them. I am not saying that he is controlled by them. I don't believe that at all, and I'm not saying it. But it's beyond question that obviously he does not control them, and he needs to take control of them. I mean,
well, it just gives the West more reasons to criticize him.
Humanity.
Yeah.
And so, and definitely for the future survival of Russia. I mean, Russia, Yugoslavia at one time was one of the most successful Eastern Bloc, post-Soviet countries. And I mean, Libya at one time was the most successful country in Africa with the highest standard of living. I mean, so the danger is real. Russia stands as the biggest obstacle to what the 21st century Nazis want to do. And yet there's people in Russia that are hobbling that resistance, and particularly in Moscow. I mean, so again, that's why I'm a communist, because I understand that, it's really, it all boils down to a class struggle in the end.
That's right.
And I want to tell you that I don't know if you saw, but the first time I ever voted for president in 1988, I voted for Ron Paul.
Ron Paul,
Libertarian Party.
my guy. Yeah,
88.
that's right. His
The
first
last
time.
time that I voted was in 2000. I voted for Ralph Nader for the Green Party.
Right.
And then after that election, I understood that, voting in the United States, the U.S. election system is completely rigged, and I understand. And RFK Jr. is a charismatic guy, but he's not going to change anything. Voting in the United States is a game for suckers. Anybody that.
You know what Mark Twain said about voting a long, long time ago, don't you?
Yes, of course I do. And it's true. And what he said, it's like, if it changed anything, they wouldn't let you do it. It's rigged from the get-go. The way that I voted in 2000, and then I saw, Bush rigged the election, stole it from Gore, who wouldn't have been any better than Bush.
Yeah,
he was a real scumbag.
Two wings, same bird.
Yeah, but voting in the United States, it's like a form of political masturbation. It feels good for a minute, but it doesn't change anything. It's a complete fantasy. And in the end, it just leaves a mess that somebody has to clean up.
So that is, speaking of messes that need to be cleaned up, getting back to that East-West separation, that division in Ukraine, I think what a lot of our Western viewers don't know or don't understand is that the Western part of Ukraine, of course, is where that's the hotbed of Ukrainian nationalism, and they tend to be more European in their ways, consider themselves to be Europeans. And the eastern part of Ukraine, that's Soviet country, and it still remains to this day still a very
the eastern part of Ukraine, the Donbass region, which includes parts of southern Russia, including Rostov, Taganrog. There's a poster that was published 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, 1921, right after the Civil War. And it was a map of Donbass, of southern Russia and eastern Ukraine. And it said, Donbass, serce Russia. Donbass is the heart of Russia. And this is from 1921. This is in the days of the Soviet Union. And it didn't say Donbass is the heart of Ukraine. It didn't say Donbass is the heart of the Soviet Union. It said Donbass is the heart of Russia.
I've seen that. And that was like 1921 during that very short-lived period of Ukrainian independence. Very short-lived.
That's right. Well, during the Civil War, there was a dozen different people's republics here.
That's right.
Basically, in Donetsk Oblast. Mariupol was called Makhnovia after this anarchist guy, Nestor Makhno. It was, it's an interesting place. It's had some tough times, but it's got some glorious history too.
And speaking of history, we've talked quite a bit about the Nazi problem, but to make it a little more contemporary, I know you've been there for about a decade now, getting close to 10 years. You've seen it from the ground. How widespread is fascism in Ukraine today?
It's so it's like today, the big news today that the Turkey has released these Azov Nazis that Russia traded for Medvedchuk. Okay, so here's the thing about Nazis. The really hardcore Nazis, they're the same as like ISIS terrorists. You know, these are guys that can, you know, cut your face off with a knife and laugh about it, you know, and make a video about it and put it on TikTok or something, you know.
Which they
These are
routinely
guys
do.
that can slaughter children in front of their mother and think nothing of it. They can do it all day long, every day. You know, you understand, you think about, you know, they say, oh, how long it takes to train a pilot for an F-16 or something. But think how long it takes to train someone that can butcher little children, you know, to totally remove their humanity, to make them, you know, so brutal that they look at, you know, another human being as like, you know, like you look at a fried chicken or something, you know.
Turns my
And that's the dudes that just got released. And that's why they're so important to the Nazis in Ukraine and their masters, the Nazis in Washington, D.C. and London and Brussels and Tel Aviv. It's because these people, you know, they're, you know, they're absolute psychopaths. That's right. You know, you say, okay, you know, go run over everybody in this town with a steamroller. Okay, no problem. Line them up.
And they take great pleasure in it if they're Russian. Gives them a thrill.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, it's like somebody that's a psychopath like that, they don't care who it is. You know, I mean, the same guys that are willing, you know, that are that murdered the Russian prisoners of war, you know, the well-known videos that were made where they were kneecapping guys or shooting them in the crotch, letting them bleed out, beating them up while they're dying. You know, they'll kill Russian prisoners of war, or, you know, they'll go kill civilians in Bucha. You know, they say, oh, you know, some civilian with a white armband, pop, 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 just go ahead and gun them down. Oh, they got a Russian, you know, C-ration food carton, bam, bam, bam. They took food from the Russians, kill them. You know, and these are the same ones that, you know, and they're not the frontline troops. They're the guys behind the frontline troops. They're the blocking troops. They take the conscripts and they say, okay, you go to the front line and you stay there and don't come back. Because if you come back, we're going to shoot you. You know, they shoot their own guys. I mean, there was a video I saw last week, some battalion commander, he went to the front. There was a bunch of guys on the front line in a bunker. And the commander says, all right, we're going, you know, we're going to go on the attack or something. And the guy said, no, we're not going. And he's like, yeah, I order you to go. And they're like, you know, get out of here. You know, and you could hear like somebody cocking their AK. And the battalion commander, he walks outside. He tells his assistant, give me a grenade. And he throws a grenade in there in the bunker with, you know, half a dozen dudes or something like in that. His own guys, kills them. You know, and that's the thing. They don't care who it is. You know, once you acquire the taste for blood, you know, you don't care who it is.
It's sometimes I think that their Russophobia is really just an excuse to kill, just as the Nazis used communism as an excuse to take pleasure in killing everybody in sight. It was just the thrill of the kill more than it was political ideology or racial hatred or religious hatred. They just like to kill people. They're psychos, like you said.
You know, it's like from that book, 1984 by George Orwell, there's the classic line about power. You know, and when O'Brien has Winston Smith strapped down to the chair in room 101 at the end, and he asks Winston, he says, how does one man exert power over another man? And Winston knew the answer. He said, by making him suffer. You know, so every time you hear about a powerful billionaire, a powerful oligarch, or a powerful politician. Just remember, that's the definition of power.
That's right. And, of course, here in the West, I am, of course, that's the reason I'm off YouTube right now, probably. I am frequently accused of being a Putin puppet, a Putin stooge, a pro-Russian mouthpiece. Now, I do support Russia in this conflict, but I'm not one of those fangirls who says that everything Russia does is great or Putin's the greatest thing ever. And we do have a lot of those in the West. And I think some of them are frankly running a very good grift. I'm not going to name any names. I think you know who I'm talking about. And, they're selling a vision or a version of Russia that honestly is a lot of propaganda. I don't believe a lot of that. I'm trying to be honest with my audience. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because you're not a bullshitter and you're not a Russian fanboy. You are very sober in your analysis and you know what's going on because you're actually there. A lot of these pundits over here in the West, I call them the Putin fanboys, they're not there. They're sitting over here in the United States, literally reading headlines off RT and making a pretty good
and then giving their opinions. And
so I just want to say I'm not so much pro-Russia as I am anti-Nazi, and that's the way I felt about it in World War II.
I'm a citizen of the Russian Federation. I have a Russian passport. I'm very happy and proud about that fact. But my deepest loyalty, the reason I came here was to help the people of Donbass, and like I said, Donbass is the heart of Russia. The people here are unique. They are sacred. They have courage and the willingness to self-sacrifice, to work hard. That is an example for the world,
Absolutely.
There may be other people, around the world, Vietnamese, Cubans, Hezbollah, perhaps, but the people here are very special. And, my first loyalty, my heart is with them, and it's like where I live, where my wife and I have a house in the Petrovsky district. That's like, the toughest, poorest, most bombs district of the whole city of Donetsk. And I'm proud to be from there. It's, the salt of the earth, yes, exactly. Yes. People come from there. And, I love Russia. I have defended it. Everyone here in Donetsk has defended Russia for almost 10 years now. And it's not, and we're very glad that the Russians came in when they did, because the Ukrainian and NATO Nazis were getting ready to make a major offensive and Rwanda-style genocide. Yes. And so we're very glad that the Russians came in when they did. But before they came in, for 8 years before that, we defended Russia. That's and right. It's, Russia has yet to pay us back in the way that we deserve. And the best way to do that, of course, is to get the Ukrainian army far enough away where they can't bomb our city every day like they do right now.
That's right. Which leads me to ask the obvious question. I know you're in a war zone, but what's going on right there in Donetsk lately where you live?
Well, okay, so our house is in Petrovsky district. That's about 7 kilometers from the Ukrainian positions in Mariinka. We have not lived in our house for about the last year because of very heavy shelling. Our house has been damaged 3 different times by artillery shells, not direct hits, but shells that, heavy 155, HIMARS, 152, very heavy artillery. It's landed in all directions around our house within 100 meters. Wow. Just the shock wave, can break the
you out of
siding
bed.
off your house. I mean, and we've had like, shrapnel come through the roof, come through windows, stuff like that, So we are staying right now in an apartment in the center of the city, which is, also under heavy shelling, but not as bad as in Petrovsky district, So I go to Petrovsky, every day or every other day. We have a couple of cats there. I go to feed the cats, check the house, check the neighbors. I mean, we've had two neighbors have been killed within a couple of 100 meters of our house, people that we knew.
Yeah.
So, it's no joke. It's a serious situation. And
I can't imagine.
It's a miracle that the people here still can stand it. I mean,
Yes.
it's 10 years of real war here. And, people, they say, oh, it's a post-traumatic stress or something. No, it's not post because it's still going on every day,
Right. Right. It's been constant bombardment for a decade, damn near. They're the toughest people in the world, the strongest people in the world, and I'm constantly amazed, and I'm amazed by how resolute and calm you are, of course, in the midst of all of this. I know you've got a family too that you have to protect and keep calm, and cats. But I was
Yeah.
curious to ask if you could confirm this for me, since your home has actually been damaged. I'm told that the Russian government is offering free replacement housing to people in the war zone whose homes have been irreparably damaged.
Well, it's,
Is that true?
actually it's kind of that's a contentious subject because they're offering it. I mean, let me put it this way. Yes, they are, and they're giving it to people. It's not quite on an equitable level. Some people get more, some people get less. It's like the rebuilding of Mariupol.
Right.
Russia has put huge amounts of work and effort and money into rebuilding Mariupol. I mean, it was like an Armageddon style. The whole city looked like Stalingrad or something. In a year ago when I was there, I was going there even before the fighting stopped, and it was tough. But I mean, so now they have new housing, Mariupol, a new hospital, but the people in Donetsk are still waiting for a lot of stuff that other people have gotten, and, understand that, 2 years ago, everybody in Mariupol was on the Ukrainian side, whether they liked it or not. That's where they were, and the people here in Donetsk have been on the Russian side since 2014. And the people here, sometimes they ask, like, what the hell's going on? They're building new apartments for the Ukrops in Mariupol. And I'll tell you, I went there, and even before the fighting stopped, I was interviewing people that were standing in line for Russian human aid. And I had some hipster chick tell me, Slava Geroyam, Slava Bandera type stuff,
Wow.
And this is why she's waiting in line to get some human aid from Russia. But I mean, a lot of people are, they're just, they're stupid, or they're confused, or, they don't really know what's going on, and they just,
Girls got to eat, right?
Well,
I guess she had to eat that food, no matter where it came from. So I've got one last burning question on my mind, Russell, because I know that you've been a long-time cannabis legalization activist. I know that you have unfortunately been prosecuted by the United States for growing this medicinal plant this herb, and that the government gave you one hell of a hard time. So, of course, I know that marijuana is illegal over there in Russia. Do you still smoke weed? Can you smoke weed over there?
Well, I'll tell you that when I came here, I figured that I was never going to smoke weed again. And that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for where I live now and what I do now and who I'm with now. It's a fact that, in ancient history, the people of the Donbass region were called Scythians.
Scythians?
And 1,000, 2,000 years ago, they were known for putting cannabis plants on the fire inside of a tent, a sauna type deal. And
interesting.
Being very fond of that, so it's
well,
not
it's good farming country.
When I came here, I thought that nobody ever even heard of weed here, but
I'm
apparently
sure
way back in history, somebody did hear about it once back then.
Do you think that Russia will ever legalize it or decriminalize it? Or is that just a hard no in Russia?
I think that's going to be a lot tougher than it was in the United States. First of all, I am one of the guys that helped legalize weed, helped change the law. I worked from 1990 till 2000 as one of the national level legalization activists. I was friends with Jack Harrer and Dennis Perone, Chris Conrad, Willie Nelson, back then when it was changing, and I'm one of the guys that helped change it. I'm very proud of that because, you can ask an American citizen, when's the last time the U.S. government ever did anything that made life better for regular people?
Amen.
And, you can say, and if you can think of anything, it's going to be, well, they legalized weed,
Yeah.
It's like
someday,
about the only
maybe.
thing. Well,
maybe.
I mean, and now, of course, you see that
states are doing
and understand that it's interesting. Even back then in the 90s, dude, I'm talking about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. George Soros was a big funder of the weed legalization movement.
That is true.
And I know. And as you see it now, I mean, it's like the internet, which you could say also might have been something that the United States government did that improved the lives of people. But, they did it and then they took it over and they, turned it back to crap. I mean, it's like the internet now, it's a surveillance tool. It's a propaganda tool.
Right.
It's a censorship tool. And
we just found out tonight on this show, once again.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, I remember the days when, it was, AOL and dial up. It took 5 minutes to download a black and white picture.
That's right.
And I saw the potential that it had back then. And, for a while there, it was really great. It was the information version of the Wild West.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's taken over by corporations. And just like with, the weed situation, when I was working to legalize weed, I said I want it to be legal like corn. When anybody can grow or have or consume as much as they want, and sell as much as they want, stuff like that. And of course, I'm very, very much against any hard drugs. Weed is completely different. I mean, weed is less dangerous than booze or tobacco or heroin or, meth or whatever else you can say. So weed's in a separate class. I'm only talking about weed. And
And I just want to point
unfortunately,
out, because I think a lot of our viewers don't know this about you, but you ran for United States Senate for the state of Minnesota in 1990, was it? With a
that's
party
right.
called the Grassroots Party, and your whole platform was the legalization of marijuana, cannabis.
That is right.
And
I
you had
mean,
like a really tiny budget, but you did super well in the election. How many votes did you get?
I got 30,000 votes, which is about 1.5%. I spent about $300 on my whole campaign. So I spent a penny a vote. The Republican incumbent, Rudy Boschwitz, spent $6 a vote, and he lost. And Paul Wellstone, who was the last honorable man to ever step into the United States Senate, he won. He spent $1 a vote. And he got more votes than the Republican incumbent.
And that was around the same time that Governor or Jesse Ventura ran for governor and actually won as an independent.
Actually, yes. That was some years. That was about 8 years before Ventura ran for
so there was always that independent
Minnesota.
movement up there in Minnesota that was so strong.
Well, it's Minnesota is a really cool state, man. It is. It's highly educated. It's very Scandinavian influenced. The people there are smart. They look out for each other. And I mean, I lived there for 7 years and I really loved it.
Oh, yeah. If it wasn't for the cold, I'd love to live there too, but I'm just too much of a Texan. I can't handle the cold. You're handling it pretty well. You're over there where it gets real damn cold. How's that for a South Texas boy? How do you?
It's free air conditioning, man. I love it.
That's awesome. Well, Russell, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to thank you for joining us. And please tell folks where they can find you, where they can follow you, and where they can support you.
Okay, thanks, Laurie. Like I said, excuse me.
That's okay. Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. I've been deleted from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and So I'm on Telegram, which is an excellent platform for finding alternative news. It's like the Russian version of Twitter. I'm also on VKontakte, which is VK. It's like the Russian version of Facebook. Has 600 or 800 million subscribers, many of them in English. Both Telegram and VKontakte can be translated into English. I mean, it's time for people to understand that if they want to find the truth, they have to do a little work. It's not a free deal. There's a lot of people out there that want to hide the truth. They want to, distort the truth. So if you want to find the real truth, you have to do a little work. I recommend Telegram and VKontakte highly. You can find a lot of stuff there that you'll not find anywhere else.
You said they have the translate tool, and you got me curious because I couldn't find a translate tool. They finally built a translate tool onto VK for English.
Yeah. Or actually, on VK, what I do, I mean, I use the any basic whatever browser you use.
Yeah.
You can add an add-on there. It'll translate into English. The whole page right there.
Okay, so it's not actually built into VK, but you can just use your browser's translate tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and it's like that's what it is. You have to do a little work to find the gold.
I like it a lot better than Facebook. I just can't read or speak Russian. I can't read or write Russian worth a damn. So sometimes I'm a little lost on there.
The good thing about it is that there are good translating tools these days. Yeah. I mean, Facebook, it's just, I was on it for, 10, 12 years, but just, thinking of what it is now, the propaganda, the censorship. And I was on it till they kicked me off, so, it's not like I can say, oh, yes, I closed my Facebook account. No,
And they
they
kicked me
kicked me
off
off.
for
They
airing a
deleted
speech from
everything.
Vladimir Putin. That's why they kicked me off. And just this week, Maverick News was suspended from Facebook after many years of broadcasting there, which is why we're not broadcasting live on Facebook tonight, right now. Normally we would be, but we are under a temporary ban, hopefully only temporary, on Facebook. But you know how it is, Russell. Once you get on their radar at these social media companies,
That's right. Of
you
course.
never
I
get
mean,
off the radar.
and you know what they say? FFB.
FFB? What does that mean? What is that? Tell me.
Okay, well, let me put it this way. The first F, then the second F is FB is Facebook. So F
Oh, got you.
Facebook.
I thought I was looking for the FJB. F that guy too. Because you know who's behind so much of this censorship. And we now know because of the Facebook revelations that just came out this week, released by the judge and supporting documents for a censorship case, right? That the judge told the Biden administration they had to cease and desist and stop ordering these social media companies to censor individual Americans, right? And with that lawsuit, there were 25 pages of supporting documents submitted by the judge that showed a very clear pattern of White House officials in contact with people at Facebook, telling them what to do, bossing them around, telling them who to censor, what subjects and what particular keywords to strike people for. We also know from the Twitter files revelations from a few months ago. So all we're waiting for now is the YouTube files, because we know for certain that it's happening at Twitter and Facebook. And you know it's happening at YouTube as well. These orders come directly from the Biden administration and this White House.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my point. You know, I mean, why would you want to try and get information from a place like Facebook that you know beyond any question not only censors the truth and, you know, pushes down the truth, but then they promote, you know, complete BS. You know, they put the lies out there. Oh, you know, the vaccine won't hurt you.
And don't you dare say otherwise, or we will kick you off this platform, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why you gotta find alternative sources like Telegram and vContact.
Absolutely. And Rumble. I want to thank everybody who's watching on Rumble tonight. Here lately, we actually have a lot more viewers usually watching on Rumble than YouTube nowadays, and that makes me very happy. I like to see people getting off these censorship platforms.
And each one of those people on Rumble that took the time and effort to make an account there, you know, you got to respect them, because that's the kind of work that you do to overcome censorship.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody watching on Twitter. Thankfully, Twitter's probably the last social media platform we have that is still somewhat free. It's not perfect, but they do let us say things on Twitter now that were not allowed before.
Thanks to Elon Musk.
So thank you, Elon.
I hope he kicks Zuckerberg's ass if they ever get to that cage
Me
match.
too. I'm totally down for that. Russell, thanks for staying up late with us. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you finally. I felt like I know you just from being internet pen pals and following you for so many years, but we finally get to meet face to face, and it's just been a fantastic conversation.
It's a real pleasure for me too, Laurie. Thanks to you and the guys from Maverick Media. The truth is our most important weapon. Thanks to you guys that are working to get it out there in spite of all the obstacles. And, together we can make a better world for everybody. And that's the whole idea.
Peace. Love you, brother. Take care. Be safe.
Okay.
Good night.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left. positive touch is negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.